My pleasure now to introduce Dr. Danti. Dr. Michael Danti is a Near Eastern archaeologist and cultural heritage expert with experience in Iraq, Syria, Iran, and the United States. He directs the Iraq Heritage Stabilization Program at the University of Pennsylvania and Penn Museum, with preservation projects at Nimrud, Nineveh, and Tisiphone in Iraq. Thank you so much. Please welcome Dr. Danti.
All right, I should be sharing my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes, it looks great.
Thank you very much. This is very informative. I'm really happy to be here today to talk about Penn IHSP's work with Iraqi SBAH at the site of Nimrud. We have currently, since 2018, been conducting cultural heritage assessment, emergency response and stabilization projects, as well as research initiatives with Iraqi SBAH with the aim of safeguarding access to cultural heritage, primarily in Nineveh province, but also in surrounding regions. Penn IHSP has completed around 15 projects and implemented more than that. At this time, we have 2 larger archaeological projects at Mashki Gate at Nineveh and our work at the site of Nimrud, or ancient Kalhu. More information is available on our website about these various projects. Some of them were assessment or smaller emergency response projects. Many of them were total reconstructions of sites following the ISIS occupation of Nineveh province. At Nimrud, very quickly, since we've already had a wonderful introduction to this site, our work since 2022 has been focused on 2 areas of the site adjacent to the Northwest Palace. In the map there, you see north is to the left. We're working in the area of the Northern Temple Precinct near the Ziggurat, in the Ishtar Temple and Ninurta Temple area, which, as I think most of you know, saw intentional destructions of the structures there by ISIS in 2016. And then south of the Northwest Palace, we're working in an area called the Upper Chambers by Austin Henry Layard, but probably more aptly known as the Palace of Adad Nirari III. And that area was not disturbed by the Islamic State, but it is very poorly known since the time of Loftus's and Layard's excavations in the 1840s and 1850s. Prior to ISIS, these photos were provided by Mr. Abdul Ghani. Prior to ISIS in 2013, you could see the wonderful reconstruction of the entrance of the Ishtar Temple near the Ziggurat on the left there. This was the archaeological excavation of Muzahim Hussein and very careful reconstruction work. And you also see that there on the right from on top of the Ziggurat. And this was the target of an ISIS deliberate destruction when they leveled the ziggurat and also took a front loader or shovel and knocked down the entrance of the Ishtar Temple. So simultaneous to this, you see here the ASOR's CHI before and after satellite photos of the area. Simultaneous to leveling the ziggurat, essentially pushing it down onto the Ninurta Temple, ISIS was also looting an area just west of Muzahim Hussein's excavations in the Ishtar Temple. And they were using the shovel or front loader to do those excavations. So when we began our project with SBAH at the site, our first work under the supervision of Fadl Muhammad was to clear the debris from the ISIS destruction of the Ishtar Temple and to conduct a conservation assessment of the remains of the reconstruction and the archaeological remains there beneath it, and especially in situ sculptures that had been preserved there. We also decided to systematically excavate the area of ISIS looting to the west of the Ishtar Temple. In this area, which we thought would probably be the gate from the Ishtar temple to the Ninurta temple based on Mazahim Hussein's excavations. Iraqi SBAH Nineveh inspections had found and preserved in situ an important round-topped Assyrian relief. It looked as if it was coming out of the bulk of this ISIS looter trench, but in fact, we found that it is situated against the mud brick wall of this gate chamber. And you can see all of the ISIS period debris there in the bottom of this looter trench that was excavated using the front loader. And there is a close-up of the round-topped stele. It's limestone and would have originally been a much paler color. The Ishtar temple and the Ninurta temple were burned between 614 and 612 BC. And we quickly found that this gateway was also burned when Nimrud was sacked by the Babylonians and Medes. And that's the reason for this red color. The stele was not struck by the ISIS looting, but in fact was hacked to pieces when Nimrud was attacked in the late 7th century. So to date, we've conducted a number of excavation seasons in this gateway, the Ninurta Temple Gate, connecting these two temples at the base of the ziggurat. And on your right, you see the damage that ISIS did to the floor of the temple. It's a limestone paving, and that is the area where they dug below the floor, just missing the relief that you see there on the right against the wall. And I've marked the position of the stele on our topo plan, and that's a UTM grid that we've established at the site for point proveniencing objects in the architecture. In this photo, I show where there would have been two wooden gates, and you see the gate sockets with their limestone pivot boxes. And again, against the north wall of the gate chamber, you see the stele. And just to the left of the stele is a small marble socle that originally held a statue of King Shalmaneser III. That statue was probably looted in antiquity. We did find fragments of it with an inscription identified by John McGinnis as coming from Shalmaneser's one of his campaigns anyway, his many campaigns. And we have not found the rest of that particular statue, but I think many of you know there are a lot of these limestone statues of Shalmaneser from Nimrud and in previous excavations. So again, we have two sets of gates, and they're a reconstruction of how those gates would have worked. And since this building was burned, of course, we have really wonderful preservation overall. So there's the stele, which we are now conserving. Our stone conservator, Ewout Koek, is consolidating that stele and socle in place. And this season, we leave for the field in 1 week. We will be at Nimrud for 2 months. We will be moving these objects to our storage area, and we will be conserving the fragments of these in our on-site conservation lab. In the area of the stele, much to everyone's excitement, we have found the fragments of the stele where they lay after the ancient damage. They are on the floor level and in the debris around the stele. And this particular incredibly detailed fragment shows the astral aspect or cosmic aspect of the goddess Ishtar. There's not a lot like this in stele in terms of the detail. She's holding the ring of kingship and she raises one hand in a greeting gesture. Here is a close-up of that. And again, extraordinary detail for one of these round-top stele. And the stele probably dates to the time of King Ashur-Nasir-Pal II. Other fragments that we have found in the gate chamber include a fragment from the moon god Sin, another fragment from the sun god Shamash. So we have in the field or in the area above the king and the god, what is called the astral triad of Assyria, the moon, the sun, and the star Venus, which we would expect based on other parallels, but they're far more detailed than other stele. And we also have a fragment of the king's royal hat. you can see one fragment that suffered from the fire and another fragment that was lying face down on the floor prior to the fire, so it retains its limestone color. Other objects from the burned deposit in the area of the gate are the bronze nails, iron bands, and fittings for the gates. These gates were cedar, and we're finding large fragments of cedar in the area. The excavations are being supervised by William Hafford at the University of Pennsylvania Museum. And you see a limestone decorative finial from the gate. And we have embossed and incised bronze bands from the gate lying on the floor. And these are probably from the time of Ashur-nasir-pal II. And they're quite similar to bronze bands from Balawat. These are now have been stored in our conservation lab, and this season we will be conducting conservation and illustration of all the bronze bands, which are folded in on themselves. Our metals conservator, Helene von Santen, will be conducting this work. So to date, we have cleared the gate chamber. We now have a very good understanding of the types of objects that might have been looted by ISIS, but we also know where ISIS dumped the dirt coming from that gate chamber. And we will be excavating that back dirt or dirt pile to try to locate other elements from the gate that were looted from this area, and we hope other fragments from the Ashur-nasir-pal II relief. In our most recent season in the spring, we were able to open a small sounding under the direction of Mr. Abdul Ghani and myself at the entrance to the shrine of the Ninurta temple. And thanks to those excavations, we found the area where the human-headed lions once stood. These were removed in 1973 to the Mosul Museum, and as you know, were attacked by the Islamic State. But in finding that entrance and now having the gate chamber to the Ninurta temple joining the Ishtar temple, for the first time we're able to put these two plans of these temples together accurately. And previously, many of the plans of Nimrud had a 14-meter error, to give you some idea of the inaccuracy of previous mapping. We will continue to excavate in this area between the temples to hopefully clear as much of the Ninurta court and other areas of the Ishtar temple as possible in the coming seasons. We've also now cleared the Ishtar temple area so that we can begin other conservation works, and we hope a reconstruction of the Ishtar entrance on the east side of the temple. And then very briefly, we are also excavating in the upper chambers or the palace of Adad-nirari III. I don't have time to go into those excavations, but we've made a lot of very exciting discoveries in that area. This area is being excavated by Dr. John McGinnis and our Iraqi colleagues, and they have been able to make considerable corrections to the records left by Austin Henry Laird and by Loftus and Rossum. We now have a much more accurate plan of this part of the palace. We believe that this is an extension of the Northwest Palace built by Adad-nirari III, quite possibly as a residential reception suite for his mother, Queen Samu Ramat. In our upcoming season, we will continue the excavations in this area, and we hope into the adjacent Shalmaneser III building to better understand this area south of the Northwest Palace. Thank you very much for your attention. We've had a wonderful 3 years now of time excavating at Nimrud, working with our Iraqi colleagues. And I would especially like to thank, of course, SBH Baghdad and our colleagues at SBH Nineveh Inspections for, all the work that we've been able to do together to restore these sites and reopen access to cultural heritage in the region. Thank you.